When you go silent, a woman's mind starts racing. She wonders if she lost your attention, if she's no longer in control. That silence speaks louder than words. It shows strength, mystery, and self-respect. Instead of chasing, she begins chasing you because silence is the language of true power. Silence is often misunderstood. Many believe that when a man chooses to remain silent, it means he has nothing to say, or worse, that he is weak. But the truth is the complete opposite. Silence, when used with wisdom and self-control, becomes one of the most powerful tools a man can possess. It is not the absence of strength, it is the display of it. Women, whether they admit it or not, are deeply affected by this kind of silence because it shows them something rare: restraint, patience, and unshakable confidence. When a man chooses silence over reacting, he communicates without uttering a single word. He sends the message that he doesn't need to explain himself, beg, or seek validation. This unsettles many women because they are used to men who over-explain, who chase, who try to prove their worth. But silence refuses to play that game. It tells her that your attention is earned, not demanded. It shows that you do not respond emotionally to every test, every push, or every challenge she throws your way. This makes her see you differently, more solid, more grounded, and more respectable. Think about it. When you argue, when you justify, when you constantly try to win her over with words, you are showing her your need. Neediness never inspires respect. But when you pull back and stay composed, she feels your absence in a way that words could never achieve. Silence creates a mystery around you, and mystery is magnetic. It makes her question herself. Why isn't he reacting? Why isn't he running after me like everyone else? Did I lose his attention? That curiosity slowly turns into respect, and often attraction. Silence also demonstrates emotional discipline. Most people speak out of impulse and later regret it. But when you master the ability to remain calm and measured, you separate yourself from the majority. You are not giving her the satisfaction of seeing you break or stumble. Instead, you are holding your ground, showing that your emotions are under your control, not hers. This is a form of power that no woman can ignore because it is rare. Women may not openly praise this, but deep down, they admire it and even crave it. Another hidden power of silence is that it allows space for reflection. Instead of filling the air with explanations or reactions, your silence forces her to sit with her own thoughts. She begins to replay her actions, to wonder what went wrong, to question her behavior. Without you saying a single word, she begins to realign herself towards you. That is the influence of silence. It makes her do the work that words never could. So silence, far from being weakness, is an unshakable shield. It speaks of maturity, authority, and inner strength. Women secretly admire a man who can remain calm, mysterious, and unbothered. Silence isn't emptiness, it's presence without noise, and in that presence lies undeniable power. The moment you choose silence, something powerful begins to happen in her mind. Her thoughts no longer stay calm or steady. A woman thrives on attention, validation, and the reassurance that she matters. When that reassurance is not given, when your voice and presence suddenly go quiet, her inner world begins to spin. She starts asking herself questions she doesn't want to face. Did I say something wrong? Did I lose him? Why isn't he reacting like every other man would? That mental storm is exactly what silence triggers, and it is far stronger than any words you could have spoken. A woman's mind is naturally wired to analyze details, to pick apart situations, and to look for hidden meaning in your behavior. When you remove words and withdraw energy, she is left with a gap, and her instinct is to fill that gap with assumptions. The longer you remain silent, the more her imagination works over time. She replays conversations, she overthinks the smallest gestures, and she begins to feel the weight of your absence. What she once took for granted suddenly feels uncertain. That uncertainty becomes uncomfortable, and she realizes she no longer has the control she thought she had. Silence also flips the script. Normally, she expects you to reach out first, to clarify, to keep the connection alive. But when you break that pattern, her mind races because you are not behaving in a predictable way. This unpredictability makes her wonder if you are slipping away, if she is losing her influence, or if someone else has captured your attention. And because women hate losing what they value, she begins to pay more attention to you in your absence than she ever did when you were available. There is also a psychological shift that takes place. Silence makes her reflect on her own actions. She may start questioning whether she pushed too far, whether she disrespected you, or whether she underestimated your worth. Instead of you proving yourself to her, she is now subconsciously trying to prove herself to you. The racing thoughts often lead to regret because she realizes she might have triggered the very silence she now fears. That realization pulls her back towards you with more intensity than before. What makes this so powerful is that it's all happening in her mind, not because of anything you said or did, but because of what you didn't do. Words can be challenged, argued with, or dismissed. Silence, on the other hand, leaves no clear answer, and that uncertainty is what makes her restless. She doesn't know what you are thinking. She doesn't know what your next move will be, and the not knowing is what keeps her hooked. Her racing mind becomes a mirror of your power. By staying silent, you are not chasing, you are not explaining, and you are not seeking. Instead, you are creating space for her to feel your value in a deeper way. She starts to realize that silence is not just the absence of words. It is a test of her emotions, her patience, and her true feelings for you. And in that silence, she finds herself drawn closer, not because you asked her to, but because her own mind wouldn't let her walk away. Respect is not something that can be begged for. It is something that is earned through presence, energy, and self-control. When a man chooses silence instead of arguing, chasing, or explaining himself, something shifts inside a woman. Her respect is triggered, even if she never admits it out loud. Most women are used to men trying to win their approval with endless words, attention, or desperate gestures. But when you break that pattern, when you show that you value your self-respect over her validation, she cannot help but look at you differently. Silence in this sense is not avoidance, it is strength, and women naturally respect strength. Think about the dynamic. When you react emotionally, when you beg for understanding, or when you demand attention, you're placing yourself below her in the hierarchy. But when you step back and let silence speak, you communicate something powerful. You do not need her to feel whole. You do not depend on her approval to feel valuable. And you are not afraid to walk away if respect is compromised. That energy is rare, and rarity always earns respect. A woman's respect is not triggered by how much you do for her, but by how much you respect yourself in her presence. If she senses that you will tolerate disrespect, that you will allow her to cross lines without consequence, she may enjoy the control, but deep inside, her respect for you decreases. On the other hand, when you remain silent instead of reacting, you show her that you are not easily shaken, that you are not desperate to prove yourself, and that you will not be controlled by emotional games. This steadiness makes her pause and reevaluate the way she treats you. Respect also grows from the mystery silence creates. When you do not always reveal what you are thinking, when you do not justify every action, she is forced to wonder about you. That wondering, that curiosity leads her to view you as someone she cannot easily predict or control. An unpredictability, when rooted in confidence, is deeply respected. It sets you apart from the men who are too eager, too available, and too willing to give everything without boundaries. Another hidden truth is that respect and attraction are deeply connected. Women may be drawn to charm, looks, or words, but true lasting attraction comes from respect. Without respect, attraction fades. When you stand firm in silence, you remind her that you are not just another man seeking approval. You are a man with standards, a man with discipline, a man with self-worth. And that type of man is the one women respect the most because they know he cannot be easily replaced. Silence is therefore not weakness, but a declaration of self-value. It tells her, I don't need to argue to prove my worth. I don't need to convince you to see my value. My silence is proof that I already know it. And that realization forces her to respect you, whether she wants to or not. When you go silent, something powerful happens inside a woman's mind. Her natural curiosity doesn't just get triggered, it starts to grow. At first, she wonders why you aren't chasing, why you aren't reacting the way she expected. She might brush it off in the beginning, but as your silence stretches, that curiosity begins to take deeper root. Instead of you thinking about her all day, she is now the one consumed with thoughts of you. The absence of your words and attention becomes louder than any message you could have sent. And this is where curiosity slowly transforms into obsession. Women are drawn to mystery. They can't resist trying to figure out what they don't fully understand. When you are constantly available, constantly explaining yourself, you remove all the mystery. She already knows what you feel, what you think, and how far you are willing to go for her. But silence changes the game. It denies her that constant stream of reassurance, and instead of certainty, you leave her with questions. And those questions multiply. Why isn't he reaching out? Did I lose my influence? Has he moved on? Is he thinking about me? This endless cycle of questioning is what pulls her deeper into obsession. What makes silence so powerful is that it forces her to focus on you without you lifting a finger. Your absence creates a void, and human nature hates a void. She feels compelled to fill that space with thoughts, emotions, and assumptions. The more she thinks about you, the more invested she becomes in figuring you out. And the more invested she becomes, the more she realizes she is drawn to you in ways she never expected. Obsession begins when her mind refuses to rest until she has an answer, and silence never gives her one. Another hidden layer is that women secretly admire what they can't easily control. If she can predict your every move, if she knows you'll always come running back, she may enjoy the comfort, but it doesn't excite her. Silence, however, disrupts that comfort. It leaves her uncertain, and uncertainty fuels desire. The unpredictability of your silence keeps her alert, attentive, and even addicted. She starts waiting for your next move, checking her phone more often, replaying conversations, and imagining scenarios. She becomes trapped in the very curiosity that your silence created. This obsession doesn't always show on the surface. She may act like she doesn't care, like she's unbothered, like she has moved on. But behind that mask, her mind is restless. Silence plants itself in her thoughts and grows like a seed, spreading into every corner until she cannot ignore it anymore. And the more she tries to fight it, the stronger it becomes. Curiosity turning into obsession is not about manipulation. It's about showing that your energy is valuable and not freely given. By withholding words and attention, you make her earn the connection. And in that process, she realizes that she needs you more than you need her. That's the essence of obsession. It's born not from what you give, but from what you refuse to give away so easily. Every woman, whether consciously or unconsciously, will test you. It's not always about hurting you or pushing you away. It's about measuring your strength, your composure, and your ability to stay centered under pressure. When you go silent, many times it's because she has already tested you in some way. Maybe she pulled back her attention. Maybe she said something to provoke you. Or maybe she deliberately created distance to see how you would respond. What she is really watching for is whether you panic, chase, or collapse under that pressure. And your reaction determines the level of respect she will hold for you. If you lose control, if you flood her phone with messages, if you beg for her attention, she gets her answer immediately. You cannot handle her tests. And once she knows that, her respect diminishes because she realizes you can be easily shaken. But if you respond with silence, if you stay calm, collected, and unbothered, you send her a completely different message. You show her that you are not controlled by her moods, that you don't crumble when she withdraws, and that you are strong enough to walk away if the respect is not mutual. This is exactly what makes her take notice, because very few men have that kind of discipline. Women often test without even realizing it. Sometimes it's in the form of sarcasm, sometimes it's by ignoring you, sometimes it's through emotional distance. But underneath it all, she's watching your reaction. Will you explode? Will you chase? Or will you remain steady and detached? The man who reacts emotionally loses his position of strength. The man who maintains silence, however, communicates volumes without saying a word. That silence tells her, I will not compete for your approval. I will not lose my center for your attention. If you want my presence, you will have to match my energy. And that message is far more powerful than any argument you could make. The interesting part is that when you pass her tests through silence, something shifts inside her. She realizes that you are not like the rest. She sees that you are not desperate, not easily manipulated, and not seeking constant validation. Instead of her controlling the dynamic, she now feels drawn towards you because you've proven that your emotions are in your control. This triggers a different level of respect, and with that respect comes attraction. It's important to understand that these tests are not about cruelty, they are about reassurance. A woman wants to know if the man she's dealing with is strong enough to lead himself, to hold his ground, and to remain stable when emotions run high. Silence is often the strongest answer you can give in those moments because it shows her that your strength does not depend on her behavior. In fact, the less you react, the more she has to step back and reflect on her own actions. So when she tests you, don't take it as an attack. See it as an opportunity to prove, not to her, but to yourself, that your value is unshakable. Your silence is not avoidance, it's mastery. And the man who masters his reactions is the man who earns lasting respect. Attraction is not built on the things you say, it's built on the way you carry yourself. When you go silent, a woman begins to see you in a completely different light. At first, she might think she has the upper hand, that her absence or coldness will push you into chasing her. But when that doesn't happen, when instead you withdraw your words, your energy, and your attention, something awakens inside her. Her attraction, which may have been fading or hidden, starts to rise again. Silence flips the dynamic because it makes her realize you are not desperate for her presence, and that realization makes her want you more. Attraction thrives on challenge. If you are always available, always explaining, always running after her, she has nothing to work for. She knows exactly where you stand, and that certainty kills her curiosity. But silence brings back the challenge. It reminds her that you are not guaranteed, that you have boundaries, that you value yourself enough not to hand over your energy so easily. This kind of self-respect is deeply attractive because it shows her that you are not like the men who bend and break just to keep her around. You are solid, unmoved, and disciplined, and women naturally gravitate toward that. What makes silence so magnetic is the mystery it creates. Attraction is not about flooding someone with constant attention. It's about making them crave what is not easily given. When you hold back, when you allow space, you create a gap that she feels compelled to fill. She starts to wonder what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and why you are not reacting the way most men would. That curiosity pulls her closer, and the closer she leans, the more her attraction grows. She begins to notice the strength in your composure and the calmness in your restraint. These qualities are rare, and rarity is always desirable. Silence also shows her that you have options, that you are not afraid to walk away, and that you are not living in fear of losing her. A man who is not controlled by fear is a man who stands out, and this kind of independence is irresistible. When she realizes you are not glued to her validation, her mind naturally shifts. Instead of asking, "Does he still want me?" she begins asking, "How can I make sure I don't lose him?" That's the turning point where attraction rises to a level where she is now invested in winning you back. Another reason her attraction rises is that silence forces her to respect you. And respect and attraction are inseparable. Without respect, no woman can truly feel drawn to a man. By staying silent, you prove that you can control yourself, that you won't beg or chase, and that you live by your own standards. This authority over yourself makes her see you as someone of higher value. And the moment she perceives you as valuable, her attraction naturally grows stronger. So silence doesn't just create distance, it creates desire. It makes her chase the very presence she once took for granted. And in that quiet, she begins to feel something far more powerful than words could ever inspire, a rising attraction that she cannot control. Communication is not only about the words you speak, it is about the energy you carry, the actions you take, and the silence you hold. When you stop explaining yourself, when you choose silence over arguments, when you withhold unnecessary validation, you are still speaking. In fact, you are speaking louder than words ever could. Silence communicates strength, boundaries, and self-respect without you having to say a single thing. And women notice this, even if they pretend they don't. Every time you go silent, you are delivering a message. You are saying, "I don't need to fight for your approval. I don't need to prove my worth. I don't need to react just because you expect me to." That unspoken communication is powerful because it carries weight. Words can be doubted, debated, or dismissed, but silence leaves no room for debate. It forces her to interpret your meaning on her own, and in doing so, she often realizes just how much control you have over yourself. That realization, though unspoken, earns you more respect than any explanation ever could. Your silence also communicates your priorities. When you choose not to respond, it shows that you are not interested in unnecessary drama, that you refuse to waste your energy on meaningless arguments, and that you value peace over chaos. This doesn't make you weak, it makes you centered. It shows that you are focused on things that matter, that your time is precious, and that you are not easily moved by emotional games. That message is powerful because it demonstrates maturity and discipline, two traits that women find magnetic but rarely encounter. Beyond that, silence communicates independence. You are saying without words, "I do not rely on you for my happiness, and I am complete with or without you." That kind of communication is far stronger than sweet talk because it shifts the balance of power. A woman can sense when a man is dependent on her for emotional stability, and that dependence pushes her away. But when your silence shows her that you are self-sufficient, she begins to view you as a man of high value, someone she cannot control, someone she has to earn. Another unspoken message your silence communicates is control over your emotions. Anyone can react in anger, frustration, or desperation. That is easy. But a man who remains silent when tested, who doesn't reveal his every thought, communicates calmness and mastery. Without saying it, you are telling her, I am not ruled by emotion. I am ruled by discipline. And that quiet strength leaves a deeper impact than any speech could. The beauty of silence is that it leaves space for her to think. She begins to question herself, her actions, and her role in your life. She starts to wonder what you're feeling, what you're planning, and what you truly want. That wondering is communication in itself. It makes her feel your presence, even in your absence. And that is the loudest, most powerful form of speaking without words. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people assume that when a man goes silent, it means he has lost interest, pulled away, or disconnected. But that is not always the case. Silence doesn't always mean distance. It can mean strength, reflection, or simply the choice to not engage in meaningless noise. A man who chooses silence is not necessarily absent. He is often more present than ever because his silence carries focus, depth, and intent. And when a woman experiences this kind of silence, she realizes that it's not about neglect, it's about value. When you stay silent, you are not necessarily pushing her away. Sometimes you are protecting your peace, choosing not to get dragged into unnecessary arguments, or showing that you do not need to respond to every emotional impulse. That kind of silence is not rejection, it is wisdom. Women may not admit it openly, but they notice when a man chooses peace over chaos, when he walks away instead of exploding, and when he holds his composure instead of chasing. This silence communicates maturity, and maturity is never mistaken for weakness. There are also moments when silence is not about ignoring her, but about allowing space for reflection. Words can cloud clarity, but silence creates room for perspective. By stepping back and choosing quiet, you give her the chance to reflect on her own actions, to question her own behavior, and to feel the weight of your absence. This is not distance, it is influence. Your silence creates the conditions where she begins to move closer, not because you demanded it, but because she felt it on her own. Another powerful truth is that silence can be a form of presence. When you don't rush to fill every gap with words, when you sit confidently in your quiet, you show her that you are secure enough not to overcompensate. That calm presence has a grounding effect. It makes her feel that you are there, strong and steady, even without speaking. This is why silence, far from being distance, can actually create deeper connection. It removes the clutter and lets her feel the essence of your presence without distraction. Not every silence is coldness. Sometimes it is control. A man who knows when to speak and when to remain silent holds power over himself. He doesn't get dragged into emotional storms. He doesn't waste energy trying to prove his point, and he doesn't hand over control of his emotions. That kind of silence tells her that you are not fragile, that you cannot be shaken, and that your worth is not defined by constant words. It makes her see you as more solid, more grounded, and more reliable. So, silence is not always about leaving, it is about leading. It is about showing restraint, discipline, and presence without being loud. It is not absence, it is influence. And when she understands that your silence is not distance but strength, her respect deepens, her curiosity grows, and her attraction rises. She begins to see that your silence was never a wall. It was a mirror, showing her the value of your presence in a way words never could. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is not weakness, it is strength. A woman may not admit it, but when you go silent, her mind shifts, her respect rises, and her attraction deepens. Silence makes her reflect, question, and chase what she once took for granted. Words may win arguments, but silence wins respect. And in relationships, respect is the foundation of love and lasting connection. So understand this. Your silence is not about ignoring her. It is about valuing yourself. When you master silence, you master control. And when you master control, You become the kind of man no woman can easily forget.